let's move right along to agenda item 13, administrative rule. And who do we have here? Deputy Superintendent Newey, are you going to tee this up for us?
Thank you, Chair. So this is just to make this is the rule that governs services for students who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, and deaf-blind, and the way that contracts work between LEAs that serve these students as well as USDB. And so there was a request from board members to make some changes to this rule that would allow for USDB to charge for services in a broader capacity. And so we have brought that to the full board. This has not been in a committee. This was approved by board leadership to come to the full board today. You'll see the changes that we are proposing on lines 232 through 246 of the rule. And this just strikes any of the language that puts caps on the percentage of students that would qualify an LEA for receiving these kinds of services. Yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you. We're going to have some additional light shed here for us by Vice Chair Wood, and then a potential motion.
Well, I'll move the motion and then speak
Okay.
to it if that's
Sure.
appropriate. Do we have that? So I move that the board approve R277801 services for students who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, and deaf-blind, draft 1 on first and final reading.
Do we have a second? Second by Member Booth. Back to you, Vice Chair Wood.
So we have been tasked from Public Education Appropriation and Executive Appropriation Committee to look at how we create a sustainable model for funding for USDB in the future. This is a long-term study that will probably take us about 6 months. We have a work group that we will be forming that will get voices from the field. And so this rule does not dictate anything. As you notice, we haven't set up any process of who's paying, what's paying, how are they paying. It's simply saying, taking out that 3% so that we don't have that kind of guardrail in place as we move forward on this discussion. Any future changes will come to the board as we decide how to move forward on this. But this frees us up to start having that conversation.
Thank you. Member Carey.
Hey, thank you, Chair Hymas. Just 2 questions, if I may. One, is there an urgency? Is that why we skipped committee and brought it straight to the board? And then 2 would be, I'm just reading line 232, and I just want to make sure I understand it. It says USDB shall provide all funded outreach services at no cost for qualifying students within the LEA with less than 3%. And so I just want to better understand, are we proposing that we now charge? Are we saying that we want to charge less students? We want to charge more students? I just need to better understand the impact of that change. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, Vice Chair Wood.
Yes, so currently we have, and I could be wrong, so about 10 districts that have over 3% of the students in our state. So we have Alpine, Canyons, Davis. They choose whether or not they contract back with USDB. Some of them provide their own outreach services. Some of them contract back. Like Jordan, I know, didn't for a while, and then they decided that it was more cost effective for them because sometimes it's difficult to get these outreach providers in place. Some of these schools only might need a 0.3 FTE. And so currently only those 3% schools have been contracted or charged accordingly. Everyone else was provided. As you may recall, we had Tooele that lost a large amount of students due to some other online provider that we had to make up the difference. I think we made up $300,000 for them at the end of last year to help provide for these services because they were getting it for free and then they lost those students, so they no longer, or they weren't getting it for free, they were paying, but they lost the students and now suddenly they qualified and we had to make up the difference because they now qualified, they were under that 3%. So this just says how, and we've had that question, even in our work group, we had a representative with us that asked, she said, you mean schools aren't paying for their services? That's not what we, nobody communicated that to us. So there's even been that talk of why aren't they? And so we don't want to say you will, we could say, okay, everybody who needs an outreach person, you're paying 100%. That is not our intent in any way. Because we recognize that some are such a small amount. They're also using their special ed funds in different ways. So this is just, the urgency in this is that we're going to form the development of that work group in our meeting on Tuesday, which will then come back to the board to vote on if the makeup of that work group. And then this will be an avenue where we can have the discussion. But while this rule is in place, we don't even have that as an option, those additional contracts as an option. We've looked at multiple ways of, do we do a sliding scale based on number of students? Do we look at a scale based on FTEs? Do we, make this many have to, this many don't? So there's so many parts of the discussion that we haven't had yet. And I really want the public to be, as we have all these LEAs that are concerned about it, and we want to make sure they have their voice. Because from what I've heard, when this rule changed and we increased it to the 3%, those 3% districts didn't have a choice. They were just told, oh, here you go, start paying. We don't want to do that. We want to be transparent and have their voices at the table.
And can you address the first question?
To my satisfaction.
Was that? Okay. Thank you. Perfect. Let's go then to Member Lear, and then we have Member Earl.
Thank you. And let me first say, I am so, after all these years, it is such a relief to know that we have a committee, especially with the chair not laying it on too thick, but a chair and vice chair Wood of this committee who has familiarity with the USDB. And now we have a real board's eye view of what goes on with USDB. And I feel like it's a real strength for the board, and it should have happened 25 years ago. So I'm glad for that. But let me make sure I understand. I've heard this 3% discussion so many times and enough space in between that I forget a little bit. But right now, if this language is removed, that means that the USDB will serve any student who wants to be served by USDB without a cost to the LEA. Is that not right? Is that wrong? Okay, would you try again then for slow learner?
So what this does is that it allows there to be a contract. It allows us to charge fees to those districts or LEAs that are below the 3%. It gives us that permission.
Oh, so it's backwards.
So it's
of
the
what I
backwards.
just-
Right
so-
now, everyone below the 3% is getting those services.
For free.
And there has been concern about, well, they're getting special ed funds, and now they're getting the services provided also. And we need to show this is where the funding going. A lot of this is really legislatively based of us making sure that we are being transparent in how things are moving forward.
So one follow-up, Chair. So it's possible that after this work group meets and here's all the information, that it could go back to this 3% or 5% standard.
If that's where it comes down to, I have no answers at this point because it will be worked on by this work group and then
Okay.
brought to the board, and the board will just be the ultimate
And
decider.
then one final question that just occurred. So I'm concerned about those very small LEAs for whom that could be very expensive and have not necessarily maintained funding for this possibility. How's that going to work?
May I follow up? Yeah. Well, we are also concerned about maintenance of effort. So that is something that we're
Yeah.
looking into. So all of those things we definitely are taking into consideration.
And it'll be ready for students to be served in the next school year?
That's the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Earl?
and I don't, maybe this was addressed, but we didn't get the funding. So there's no funding for students. So it's either you don't fund the students or we find some mechanism, and maybe this works, maybe this doesn't work. But it is for next year because that's the kids that need services. So yeah, it's kind of ambiguous what that will be right now and what that will cost people or not cost people. So hopefully we can keep hammering that out. So.
Thank you. Member Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to also express my gratitude to Vice Chair Wood and for the committee for diving into this. You know, educational funding is very complicated, and the only thing more complicated than that is special ed educational funding. So just thank you to all of you that are willing to tackle this and to help us find a solution to ensure that all of our students are getting the services that they need, because that's the most important. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Member Carey.
I see Superintendent Coleman here, and it's not necessary, I'm not looking for answers from him, but I'm assuming that these discussions have been ongoing with the administrators of the USDB, and just where do they stand on this proposed change? Are they in support of it? If we could just put that on the record, thank you.
Yes, and they are intimately involved in every discussion we have. They are with us in the committee. We've had multiple conversations. I've had multiple conversations outside of the committee as I've moved through visiting with LFA, the Legislative Fiscal Analysts. I've been meeting with them. I've met with our Director of Operations and his team. We are moving through just trying, because also of HB 537, where that funding comes under us. There's just so many wheels turning right now, but they are not left out of any conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please.
But just they're not only not left out, but they are in support of these proposed changes. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, and I assume that was the case. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And we're getting the head nod from Superintendent Coleman, who's in the back. There's a thumbs up. Whatever else is needed. I will say, when you ask Leanne to do the work, she does the work and some. So we're appreciative of that. So any other questions? Let's go ahead and cue this up for a vote then. The motion then is that the board approve R277-801, services for students who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, and deafblind, draft 1, on first and final reading. Please vote. Oh, hold on.
I do have a motion that has to be an amendment that was noticed yesterday when we were going through the final posting of this. I need to strike 2017-2018 from line 250 and replace it with 24-25.
Do we have a second to that motion? I second it. Okay, so it's seconded. And then go ahead and ask your question.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because I was wondering if we shouldn't reframe that altogether so we don't have to bring it back all the time.
I will ask Elise, because my first inclination was to delete it completely. And there was some talk about the fact that we need to finalize out the current contracts that we have before any contracts would be changed. And I think Elise can speak to that if I've made any errors in my, that's it.
Okay, that
sounds
makes sense.
That's why.
So we're bringing it back after
We
the
will
current
have
contracts.
to bring back
Okay.
whatever gets ultimately decided. So this just helps us move forward.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Board members, the motion then is to replace 2017-2018 with 2024 and 2025. Is there any opposition to this motion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and dot that in. And so the new motion before the board will read that the board approve R277-801, services for students who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, and deafblind, draft 1 as amended on first and final reading. Let's go ahead and vote. That's it. That passes unanimously with Member Green stepping out. So with that, thank you, board members and staff.